Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Wednesday, June the 18th, 2025. A little bit happening in Australian boxing yesterday. A little bit spicy, more so outside the ring than inside the ring, but we'll get to that in a second. First of all, we'll get to on this day, and we'll start in 1941. The great Joe Louis knocked out Billy Conn in the 13th round to retain his World Heavyweight Championship. That was in New York at the Polo Grounds there, in front of 54,487 people. I used to get big crowds back then. No internet. Did they have TV? I don't think they even had TV back then, did they? So just word of mouth. Amazing. Also on this day, where are we? 2011, Saul Canelo Alvarez defended his WBC 154-pound title with a knockout of Ryan Rhodes, the Englishman, in the 12th round in Mexico. And in 2022, Artur Beterbiev knocked out American Joe Smith Jr. in the second round to defend the World 175-pound title. All right, so yesterday, well, first of all, probably a little bit sad for me anyway, not so much for probably a few other people, but the head splitter, Isaac Hardman, decided to call it a day. Now, he'd had a few issues, Isaac. He jumped promoters a few times. He had to actually change trainers. His long-time trainer, Blair Studley, was unable to train him anymore for various reasons. And I think he'd actually started to train with the guys at Fortitude, but not being able to get fights and, although, excuse me, just a little bit wet this morning, not being able to get the fights that he wanted and just a general frustration with the sport, he's called it a day. And look, I don't blame him, if I'm being honest. Tough sport at the level. And if you're having doubts, or he's got the family and all that there. He's got the little tacker and that now, and looks really happy in his life, so that's great. But the frustration sort of grew. I think when you talk about frustration, a lot of it was aimed at his promoters, and that was aimed. Well, the main one in his sights was Matt Rose, and in his post, he just thanked everyone for their support, his family, his friends, his trainers, of course, everyone. He went from MMA, very inexperienced MMA fighter. I think he had a couple of corporate fights or something, and moved into boxing, no amateur experience whatsoever, and did some damage. I promoted Isaac probably 3 times. I remember seeing his first pro fight when he fought Lucas Miller at the Melbourne Pavilion, and Lucas Miller was the red hot favourite. He was the house fighter. He was, I don't know whether he'd won Australian titles, whatever, by that stage. But Isaac, no one had heard of him. He was just this tough kickboxer guy or MMA guy from Queensland, and went in there and he knocked Lucas Miller out in the first round with a devastating punch. Well, around the same time, I was putting a show on in Melbourne. It was a couple of months later, I think, and I had a young fighter named Matt Sheen on the show, and you would have seen him probably on a few of the televised cards. What did he fought? He fought Connor Wallace. Yes, he fought Connor Wallace, a couple others anyway. But so he fought. So he was looking for an opponent, Matt, and it was a good young prospect too. Straight out of the amateurs. I think he'd had 3 or 4 fights or something, and looked the goods. And we needed an opponent. And I got a phone call about this MMA guy. And I knew he was dangerous. Just watching him, I thought, oh, this guy's dangerous. So, but anyway, Matt and his camp wanted to fight him. They were pretty happy to take him on and pretty confident in their own abilities. Well, the same thing happened. It wasn't a brutal knockout, but he rocked Matt and then just finished him off with a brutal set of punches. And I think his next fight up, and actually I'll go back just on that. He was the funniest guy to deal with. Because after the fight, it's like, all right, job done. So can someone take me back to the airport, please? Got to get out of here. So he didn't hang around for the night or anything. He just jumped back in a plane and went back, just business as usual. MMA guys are built differently, remember. And he had that MMA mindset of just fight anyone, anywhere, anytime, and then just get on with it, move on, win or lose, and go home and train and look forward to the next one. So he did the next thing in his next fight. I can't remember who it was, but he signed with D&L, and he was just steamrolling guys left, right and centre. And obviously it hasn't worked out for him since then. He had that loss to Michael Zarafa. We had him on the Bendigo show with Horn and Zarafa actually. And also had him on another show on the Jade Mitchell when he fought the undercard with the Russian. But just such a good guy to deal with. Really, really lovely fella. But he's a killer. Make no mistake about that. He's got that killer instinct. And yeah, look, you will say probably limited as far as boxing skills goes, but he made up with it with his whole attitude, I suppose, but more so just with an unbelievable punch, like a horse kicking you in your head. He was a massive puncher, and when he hit you, he stayed hit. So, but anyway, so he's called it a day. Probably just struggled a little bit at the top level, and as I said, the frustrations creeping and all that sort of stuff. But he took aim at Matt Rose, and what did he call him? He called him a cockhead. And he actually did a follow-up video a little bit later on, and Matt must have actually rang him, said, "Hey man, what's up? What's going on?" And we said, "Well, you're a cockhead." And look, I think it ended up getting a little bit nasty, which you don't want to see that, but I think there was a few threats made back and forth. But anyway, that's Isaac Hub, and he stuck to his guns, didn't waver, and just told it the way it is. And look, I can understand him being bitter. I've been involved in this sport for a long time, and I get it. It is a little bit of a shame for him to end on a bitter note, but I think he's gone out his way. He's just clipped a few on the way through that he wanted to clip, and he'll just sail off into the sunset. And you sort of get the impression he's the sort of guy that he won't care. Nothing will faze him. He won't miss the limelight. I think he's working on job sites and that sort of stuff. And he seems like the classic Aussie who will just get on with life, earn enough to have a good life, take care of his family, have a few beers, cook up a bit of a feed, and he'll be more than happy with that. So Isaac, mate, one of the best guys I've met in boxing, and I say that sincerely. Just a lovely, lovely fella, and there's total respect for the way he fought as well with what he had. He didn't have that glittering amateur background, didn't have all the things that a lot of young fighters have. He just wanted to fight, and I can understand his frustration that others didn't share the same sentiment as him, and just wanting to forget about all the money and all the ego and all the rest of it, just get in there and fight. He was cut from a different cloth. So Isaac, all the very best to you, mate, and I hope you have a good life, and you're not lost to boxing. I'm sure you won't be. I'm sure you'll be involved in a gym or something, but yeah, Australian boxing will miss him. All right, well, let's move on. Speaking of Aussie boxing, now I got a little bit of feedback as far as what I said the other day about George Kambosos and his resume. A lot of people saying, well, how can you compare his resume to his resume compared to someone else's resume? And it sort of got me thinking about with the Aussie resumes. Now, I thought we'll go through the current days and we'll just see what you guys think. And I'm not saying that, well, it's probably a mixture of the guys you've fought compared to the people or the guys you've actually beaten. And not a lot of Aussies have had really big scalps recently. I mean, you could probably start with Jai Pataya. Obviously, the two Breeders fights, massive scalps for him. But apart from that, hasn't really had a big fight. And I know he's looking to change that. But even though I think Breeders is very well respected, I'm not quite sure you could compare him to, say, the likes of George Kambosos, who's fought Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, and Vasily Lomachenko, Richardson Hitchens. It's a pretty good lineup. This is not, by the way, to say who's the best fighter in the country. I'm just sort of comparing resumes. I think Jai is obviously the best fighter, but as far as his resumes, as I said, apart from Breeders, who look nothing to disparage beating Breeders twice, but I think he needs a Benavides. He needs maybe Badu Jack. He definitely needs a Zurdo Ramirez because at the moment it's the only thing that's lacking for Jai is a couple of those big scalps. So I certainly would think that Jai would be just down the pecking order a little bit as far as the names on his resume. Other ones out there, Tim Tszyu, similar story. I mean, he has fought some good guys. Obviously started way back with Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn was probably finished at that stage, but still he did the job in style. He obviously the fights with the fight with Fundora, Brian Mendoza. But look, I know the opponents they brought out were brought out with a lot of fanfare, but the Ocampos, look, he was just a journeyman. He'd been knocked out a couple of times. So for Tim's opponent resume, look, it's okay, it's solid. And I suppose if you're ranking the resumes as far as a grade goes or a number, I would probably say we'll go back to Jai. I think as quality of names of his opposition, I would probably give him maybe a 6.5. Tim, I would probably give probably 6.5 or maybe a 7, just above. I mean, fighting Fundora and Murder Zaliov, two big names in the division. As I said, Brian Mendoza as well. I don't count Carlos Ocampo and some of the other guys in there. So I'd probably give, Tim maybe let's just call it a 7, I think, for his resume. As I said, for George Kambosos, again, this is not probably the wins, it's just the names on the record. And I think for George, you'd have to give him a 9.5 for the quality of opposition that he's faced. So some of the other names, actually I wrote a couple down here because I know I'll forget. Look at someone like, I suppose you could throw in the Maloneys. You don't get much better than that. You've had Jason, who's fought Junto Nakatani, and Andrew has fought, Jason has fought Naoya Inoue, and Andrew has fought Junto Nakatani, amongst others. I would probably give them, as far as I know, a lot of the names you probably won't recognise, but really solid guys. Astrolabio for Jason, Franco for Andrew. I would probably give those guys, as far as what other, the quality fighters around in the divisions that they fought, I would probably give them an 8, both of them an 8. Fought some really, really good fighters in their divisions. Some of the others, Sam Goodman, look, unfortunately, I would probably give him probably a 5.5, maybe a 6, I suppose. The only sort of name I think he's sort of fought and it's sort of grasping at straws a little bit is TJ Doheny. Apart from that, hasn't really fought anyone. I know he's had the in a way fight plan, but I mean, you've got to go by what or who they fought, and he just hasn't fought anyone. Let's hope, Nick Ball, hopefully that changes. He gets a win against Nick Ball and goes up a little bit for me. But yeah, probably a 5.5, maybe a 6. Liam Wilson's probably a little bit different. I think he's actually a little bit higher. I'd probably have Liam at probably a 6.5. The fights with Valdez and Navarrete, almost beat Navarrete. So I think I would have Liam Wilson, above Sam Goodman. And let's hope he gets another crack as well. But apart from those two guys, not really anyone of sort of note on the records. The interesting one to throw in is probably say a Michael Zarafa. Before everyone sort of spits the coffee over the screen while they're watching this, has fought some good guys. I mean, you go back, obviously the 2 fights with Jeff Horn, the Cal Brook fight was another one, Peter Quillen is another one, and obviously Erizandi Lara. The problem is, though, he hasn't beaten any of those guys or come close to beating any of those guys apart from Jeff Horn. So I'd probably give Michael probably I would say a solid 7, maybe a 7.5. Fought some good guys. As I said, just hasn't been able to get over the line when he's fighting. But you go back to the guys in yesteryear, and there's some of these ones that sort of spring to mind. The obvious ones, of course, Jeff Fenech, the Azuma Nelsons and Victor Kalejas and Steve McCrory's, and just the list goes on and on and on. The Jeff is easily a solid 9, even a 9.5. Fought the best of his generation, did Jeff. And that fight with Azuma Nelson, you can't take that away from him. So I think he's got the best resume ever in the history of boxing. I'm not going to include probably Lionel Rose and Johnny Famechon and Jimmy Corrales because I just don't know enough about their opponents. So you can only talk about what you know. I'm not going to try and be too smart and outsmart myself and look like a bit of a dill when the boxing historians come back at me. But some of the others, Jeff Harding's another interesting one. Dennis Andrews fought him 3 times. Mike McCallum, he fought as well. So some really big names on his resume there. So he'd probably have a solid 7.5. Jeff Horn even, geez, he's probably similar as George Kambosos. Polarised a few fans because a lot of people thought he was limited and lucky and all the rest of it. But geez, He probably started with Randall Bailey, I suppose, back before he fought Manny Pacquiao. But once he fought Pacquiao, he fought Terence Crawford. He's fought Mundine. He's fought obviously those fights with Zerafa. He's fought Tim Tszyu. So Jeff, I would probably give a nice solid 8 as far as the quality of opposition that he goes. That he went up against. It might even be an 8.5 if you've got Pacquiao and Crawford and Tszyu all in there. So another one is probably an unheralded one, the late Troy Waters. Fought the likes of Simon Brown, Terry Norris, Gianfranco Rossi, Felix Trinidad, Robert Wangila, the Olympic gold medalist. Very, very solid competitor was Troy Waters, and as far as his resume goes, he would definitely get probably an 8.5 as well. So you can see the quality of these guys that they used to fight. It's probably a common thing back in the day with Aussies, hasn't it? But then some of the polarising ones, or the ones that will probably be a little bit, or I think people will be split about. So the likes of Barry Michael, Lester Ellis, Anthony Mundine, and Danny Green, like true Aussie greats. But what were their resumes like? Unfortunately, I think with Barry Michael and Lester Ellis, as great a fighters as they were, and they're some of my favourite Aussie fighters, the resumes didn't really stack up. Lester didn't really fight anyone of note until even maybe later in his career, and that was probably a Kelvin Grove, who probably didn't really... well, he was a former world champion, fought a lot of guys, but wasn't really renowned as one of the really upper echelon type of fighters. So with all his plaudits, Lester unfortunately would have probably been about a 5.5, I would probably think. Barry Michael probably a little bit the same, maybe a 6. Did fight Rocky Lockridge. But this is not taking away from these guys, by the way. I'm just sort of ranking their resumes. They did what they could. Earthquake Carter was the other one that Barry Michael fought as well, who was tough back in the day. Come here. Get in there. Trying to get in someone's house there. G'day, mate. How you doing?
Good.
Good, thank you. Come on, buddy. We'll keep walking. Come on. Yeah. And then the other two being Anthony Mundine and Danny Green. Now, Anthony fought Odke, he fought Mosley later in his career. It's pretty hard to put who was the other one? Kessler. So I'd probably give Mundine or Anthony Mundine probably a 7.5, I would think, as far as his resume goes. Danny's a little bit the same. Went to Canada. Who did he beat in Canada again? Eric, was it, what's his name? But Jesus Christ, this dog again. Obviously the fight with Roy Jones Jr., the Mundine fights themselves. I'd probably give Danny probably a solid, come here buddy, 7.5. I hate walking past his house, fair dinkum. But probably a 7.5. So look, I don't know. We can each argue, who's better than who. It's not really an exercise in who was the best, who was the pound for pound number one, all that sort of stuff. It's just probably put in perspective the resumes of the fighters that we all love and respect. So, and again, it was just people saying, well, I don't think you can rate his resume. Well, I think we can. I'm talking about George Kambosos here, by the way. But I think he would rank right up there with the likes of Jeff Fenech. I didn't put Costa Tszyu in there. I mean, without rattling his off, his would probably be a 9.5 with the guys that he fought as well. Probably 9.5. He fought a lot of very, very good fighters. But just a little bit of an insight, in my opinion, though, of what the resumes were like with all the great Aussie fighters and the current fighters and where they sit. Because I think sometimes we get a little bit caught up in the boxing media and maybe other chats with other fans and everything else about where certain fighters sit. But sometimes we just forget about the quality of opposition they're actually fighting. And that's probably what I go on. I never really go by records. I go by the resumes and how solid they are. And that's why I was so respectful of George Kambosos, because he was always willing to get in there with those guys. And as I said, probably the best resume for me, apart from probably Costa Tszyu, who was Jeff Fenech, and then you heard some of the other rankers I had there. So give us your thoughts. What do you think? Have I been a bit over the top with some fighters' records? Have I not been respectful enough of some others. Let us know your thoughts. And again, this has got nothing to do with who I think were the better fighters and who would have beaten who. It's just strictly just ranking or rating people's or the boxers' records, and that's about it. So again, give us your thoughts. I look forward to it. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.